Okay, I came across this little movie that basically shouted to me to say respond. And the movie in question is Are Primaries Racist? And this is from Decoded, from MTV News. It's a wonder they call it news, but okay, fair enough. And this is the sort of question you know is going to be loaded, because by asking the question, you more or less claim that you have answered it. But let's look at the question. Let's look at the movie and let's answer it, shall we?
Are the primaries racist?
My first response would be no. Why do you think so?
Okay, I know it's huge to call the primary elections racist, but to see it, all you have to do is look at two states, Iowa and New Hampshire.
Yeah, that was badly cut by me, and this is going to happen more in this movie because basically the way they cut it is that they sometimes more or less overspeak on one another, and it's difficult for me to cut, so sometimes you will lose the end of the word. But how can we see that the primaries are racist? All we have to do is look at Iowa and New Hampshire. And she's going to make a point out of it, and it's so freaking hilarious. And in a way insulting too, to be honest, but let's continue.
So if you don't know, every 4 years before the presidential elections, the Republican and Democratic parties hold primary elections to determine who they think should be president. The primaries are basically the election before the big election.
Yep, badly cut. And indeed, the primaries are the election before the big election. And I don't know if a lot of democratic countries hold a system like this, and why America still holds this system is probably more interesting than whether it's racist or not, but that's not a question we're going to ask, so let's continue.
Since 1980, every eventual party nominee except Bill Clinton in 1992 has won either the Iowa or New Hampshire primary, and everyone who's won both states has gotten their party's presidential nomination. There's a lot of evidence that if you don't win at least one of these two primaries, you're basically not going to be president.
Well, someone has to win, and on the Democratic side, both major candidates have won one. So what would that mean? And there are plenty of Republicans. And can we already predict who will win their nomination based on just these two? No, we can't, because there's a whole country coming.
Ugh, so?
Indeed, you're trying to make a point out of it. So?
Well, if you look at the hours of primary coverage in these two states, you'll notice something missing. People of color. Like, any color. A recent census poll states that 87% of Iowa and 91% of New Hampshire identify as white non-Hispanic, which even by US standards is really, really white.
Okay, so there are two states that are predominantly white. There are more states that are predominantly white, by the way. And this is an issue because, and keep in mind, 77% of the United States is white. I know you're going to give a different number in a moment, but according to the Census Bureau, it's 77%. So I'm going to stick with them, not with you.
The entire population of the United States is 62% white non-Hispanic. So Iowa and New Hampshire just aren't representative of America.
Yeah, no, they're 77% non-Hispanic white. But that's okay, because I'm not really sure why Hispanic is an apart category to begin with. And what's even more important, why does it matter? So issues plaguing the black community are not issues plaguing the white community. So basically you're saying, let's segregate?
But all the states get to vote in the primaries. It doesn't matter who goes first. Oh, but it does.
Condescending much? But yeah, okay. Oh, but it does. Why? Why does it matter? He asked, knowing full well a rant would follow.
As the first two primaries, Iowa and New Hampshire have serious clout. Why? Well, it's kind of like a magic trick. One, simply because they're first, candidates spend a ton of time and money there. Two, the media then talks about these states a lot because they're first and candidates are spending a lot of time and money there.
And you, being part of the media, can break this cycle, but choose to not
3. Then when a candidate wins one of these states, the media makes a big deal out of it, and voters in the rest of the country think, well, here are the serious contenders. They won a primary.
Yeah, because it's Americans that are stupid. I mean, they don't realize that if you have 10 horses in a race and only one of them will win, it is completely possible that one of the other 9 horses can win in other races as well. And one of those horses could just as easily have had an off day. But no, because one of them won in New Hampshire or Iowa, well, the rest of America suddenly feels like, oh yeah, no, I have to support him now, because he's sure to win.
4. This inspires voters and donors to give lots of money to those serious contenders.
So just like regular Americans, these guys are idiots, because all of a sudden they feel they need to support someone, even though on average most of the money given has been given before Iowa and New Hampshire, or at least that's my simple belief of it.
5. Abracadabra! Momentum begets momentum, and Iowa and New Hampshire maintain their magic predictive abilities. Kind of a shitty magic trick when you can see the string.
Yup, and just like every other magic trick in the book, the magician kinda counts on the gullibility. So this story, well, it's believable if you're gullible, that is true. Thank you for your magic trick.
But what about a guy named Obama being elected as president and a guy named Ted Cruz winning Iowa? I mean, how can there be racism? Look, no one's saying the people of Iowa or New Hampshire are all racist, but whether intentional or not, the primary system is an example of institutional racism.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but so far your story has been rather racist. And to now claim that there's institutionalized racism, what institute? I mean, people can't move to Iowa. There aren't black people that have been able to buy or rent a house in New Hampshire. They are by law required to stay away from those states. Because if this is the case, you've got something huge. But if it's like most other states that have a low number of colored people choose not to go and live there, then it's not institutionalized, now is it? And if you are correct to claim that this is racism, then why would they go to Iowa? I mean, wouldn't Maine or Vermont be a better choice? Because they also have a huge percentage of white people living there. I mean, Iowa is only, what, to your account 81%, to my account 88%, but still, I mean, Vermont has, on my account, 94%, and I'm not even sure what your account is. So if this is racism, then they wouldn't go to Iowa, they'd go to Maine or Vermont, wouldn't they?
Because even though a black man won the presidency and a Latino man won Iowa, the percentage of people of color in those states is so low that the primary system basically lets candidates ignore the concerns of people of color early on, simply because they aren't in those states to voice their concerns.
Now, to me, this is the biggest piece of bullshit you've spoken so far. Because, on average, if part of the population has inherently different problems than a different part of the population, you're talking segregation. Now, I would think that black people want to have a job, want to be able to raise their kids, want to have their kids go to school, just like white folks. But if I'm wrong, and in all fairness I hope I'm not, if I'm wrong, then we have a segregatory system built by the people, not by society. Which is weird because people is society, but bear with me on this one. Either we have a populace and the populace is one, or we have a populace based on different groups and they all have different needs. If the first is the case, then racism, though still possible, isn't an institutionalized issue. If the second is true, you're still proclaiming segregation. And I'd thought that Martin Luther King tried to end segregation.
People of color are thus disenfranchised by not being represented and by having lots of candidates drop out before they even have a chance to vote. And voila, textbook institutional racism.
Yeah, because assumption plus assumption plus magic, whether it's true or not, ta-da! Institutional racism. Doesn't that mean that institutional racism in itself is an assumption? I personally would think so, but...
So there's gotta be a good reason these two states go first then, right? Nope. After 1968, the Democratic Party spread out the primary schedule, and Iowa scheduled theirs first because the Iowa caucus is weird and complicated. And since New Hampshire had always gone first, suddenly they became number one, number two. Pretty arbitrary. Okay, why don't we just change who goes first? Problem solved.
You know, I'm only partially agreeing with that one. Why don't we change who goes first? Problem solved. But it's not that simple, because reasons. Doesn't have to make sense.
People have tried, but these first two states have solidified their standings. In 2008, Michigan and Florida tried to secure earlier primary dates, but the politicians who pander to Iowa and New Hampshire got them to back down by threatening to take half of Michigan and Florida's delegates. Half! Seriously?
Yeah, that sounds pretty fucked up. Seems that politicians think that there's some truth to winning the Iowa and New Hampshire caucuses thingy. Maybe because it's easier to donate all your time and spend all your campaign focused on one or two states than the whole of the United States. But that's just me thinking out loud. I think that's because, you know, the way politics sets up over there. It's pretty fucked up though. I mean, I agree with you on that.
Iowa even wrote a law that says they have to be first. They basically managed to finagle dibs forever. Okay, so what's the solution?
Okay, I'm pleasantly amused that you are looking to find a solution, which is positive. It's not just ranting. You actually want to find a solution, or at least that's how it seems. But I'm not really sure, because what's the problem? I mean, we've done quite a bit, but I'm not really sure what the problem is.
We could have a national primary for our national election, you know, for the biggest job in the nation, but that makes too much sense.
Yeah, you know, maybe this does make too much sense, but at the same time, I'm 100% behind you on this one, because the whole, well, system of different locations in the country is archaic. I mean, it's left over from a time when we didn't have mass communication, so there is no reason to do it the way we are doing it now, other than it gives donors a chance to spend money and politicians to play themselves a little bit in the picture. But yeah, I mean, if you look at a country like, oh, let's say India, which has a democratic system as well, they don't have caucuses. I mean, there's an election. Done. So why can't America make its election a one thing? Say that because it's a huge area of land, you say, okay, we'll take 48 hours, and after 48 hours we will do all the vote counting of all the different states, and that's the end of it. Seems like a good idea, actually. And it's a good way to actually go for democracy. Get rid of all that middleman bullshit. Oh yeah, no, you won Iowa, therefore all of Iowa will vote for you. No, wait a second. But only a little bit more than half of Iowa voted for me, so why do I get 100% of Iowans vote? Anyway.
Or we could at least find more representative states. According to a recent NPR study, the state whose racial makeup, median age, household income, and religiosity most closely match the national average is Illinois, followed by Kansas. So while no state is perfect, if we gotta do this primary state by state, Illinois sounds like a better and more representative choice than continuing to massively disenfranchise people of color.
It's too bad to see that you're pretty fast in abandoning your previous idea, having the whole of the United States vote at once. Because I'm thinking that's actually a really good idea. Get rid of the voting system as America has now and go to a system where every vote counts. So you don't have to say, okay, well, you won in Iowa, but you lost in Delaware, and you won in New Jersey, but you lost in Alaska. No, all votes, all one big pile, all counted. You won in the United States or you lost in the United States. Period. One person, one vote. Yes, why not that? Go for that. And then you come back to your racism issue and say, oh no, we should take the medium state. We should take Illinois instead of Iowa and New Hampshire. No, don't you see what you're doing? You're trying to perpetuate a system that's corrupt, a system that's broken. Why not say, you know what, the whole of the USA votes. Period. That way, you can't say that, well, yeah, it panders to this or it panders to that. No, because everyone had their vote. And unlike now, one vote actually counts as one vote. Because now, in some states, a vote is a little bit more weighted. So, yeah, everyone vote at once. I'm all for that. Let's make it happen.